On the story, I'd like to bring in our international affairs commentator, Douglas Herbert. Doug, good to see you. This is a complicated story, so just talk us through how this conflict broke out 8 months ago.
Well, it depends which side you ask, who started it all, right? But when Abiy Ahmed basically sent his troops, the Ethiopian forces and aircraft into this region in northern Ethiopia, the Tigray region, restive region, basically it was part of a long-running feud that had been going on really for years. Ever since the prime minister had come to power in 2018, he's really been, according to his critics at least, been trying to snuff out the influence and the opposition elements remaining from the Tigray People's Liberation Front, the TPLF. This is a group, the group we're talking about, that the Ethiopian forces came in to basically subdue. They started out as rebels way back when, in the 1970s. They eventually, in the early 90s, actually toppled the Ethiopian government. And for decades, nearly 3 decades, they were the rulers. They led a rebel alliance that ruled Ethiopia. That all came to an end in recent years, and especially after there were anti-government protests. The current prime minister, Abiy Ahmed, came to power, and those rebels were reduced to a residual force in this region of northern Ethiopia. And basically what you have right now is a lot of disgruntlement on both sides and grievances on both sides being played out, but being played out in a very fierce and atrocious way, with fighting which is causing horrific casualties on both sides.
And speaking of this conflict, it's the direct impact on civilians has been enormous. Atrocities have been committed, including the use of rape as a weapon of war.
Yeah, ethnic cleansing and sexual atrocities, including rape, absolutely. And let's be clear here. The humanitarian international officials, UN officials, they point a lot of the finger of blame at the invading forces, at the Ethiopian federal forces that came into this region back in November of last year, but also abetted by, and here's where it gets a little extra tricky, abetted by forces from Eritrea. Now, you might say, what are soldiers from Eritrea, Ethiopia's neighbor, with whom Ethiopia fought a fierce border war in the late 1990s up until 2000? They were arch enemies. What is going on there? Why were Eritreans? Well, Eritreans also had some grievances with the Tigray rebels up in this northern region. So they joined forces, essentially, with the Ethiopian government. Now, this is something that the Ethiopian federal forces weren't really acknowledging until they were actually called out on it. And then they acknowledged, well, they're there, but they'll be leaving soon. These Eritrean forces actually have been accused of some of the worst atrocities of what is now an 8-month civil conflict. And atrocities which are now, and a conflict which is now threatening to spill over, perhaps, into the broader region, the region known as Horn of Africa, including Sudan, neighboring Sudan.
And this conflict, of course, has left the Ethiopian prime minister's reputation in tatters.
Well, first of all, you only need to look. Yeah, he won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2019. He was the darling of the international community for striking a peace deal with Eritrea that I was just talking about, for undoing some of the more repressive security laws, for freeing political prisoners. You couldn't say enough about him. It was like Aung San Suu Kyi. Right, in Myanmar, the same sort of thing. But it's really been a turn against them. You look at the humanitarian catastrophe right now and the atrocities I was just talking about 5 million people, which is a majority of the population in this province right now, are in dire need of some sort of humanitarian aid, according to the UN. And they are basically, you've had 1.7 million people displaced. You have hundreds of thousands in famine, one of the worst famines Africa's seen since the Somali famine, perhaps, in 2011. And a lot of that, they are blaming it on Abiy Ahmed for his use of sending these troops in with the Eritrean soldiers and the acts that he is accused of committing, or at least of commanding. So this is a man whose star has really faded with the international community, and we don't know where it's going to go from here, because right now the fighting is still ongoing. Sure, there are the reports of a truce being declared, but it's not like they're about to retreat and just let the Tigray rebels have their way. I would predict that this is something that's going to continue to be a real thorn in the side of the international community, and his star is going to continue to fade.
Douglas, thank you very much for that. Douglas Herbert.